when you have a player who is playing very well at a very high caliber of play, you can deal with a lot of crap when it comes to that player. But the second that starts to diminish, all the outside stuff becomes harder and harder to ignore. Just like everything that happens with the Jets, there's always multiple stories that come out whenever there is any sort of breaking news. The problem here, again, I think, is the way the media is reporting it. And again, especially Dianna Russini, who time and time again seems to be inflating everything that comes from the Jets. Now, I'm guilty of this too, where we get a little hysterical over all of these athletic articles and what Dianna Russini is saying is happening inside the organization, whether it's Johnson having non football guys in football meetings, whether it's him nixing a Jerry Judy trade, or the rumor that they're using Madden ratings to evaluate players. But this time it's specifically with Aaron Rodgers and how the Jets dealt with him in a meeting that apparently occurred last week. Let's take a look at the video to remind ourselves exactly what was said.
Well, we'll leave it to the Jets to try to maneuver their way into the big Sunday morning splash with Jay Glazer reporting that Aaron Rodgers was informed by the New York Jets that the Jets are going to be moving on. And obviously, we are not surprised by that. We've been talking about this on the show for months. And we've also been discussing how, most of the candidates that were interviewing for that Jets job had suggested to the organization, hey, if I get this job, I'm going to do this without Aaron Rodgers. And obviously that appears to be Aaron Glenn's thought process on this as well. And I was told that when they had conversations with Aaron Rodgers about what the future would look like, if you're going to be part of this team, you're going to attend all of the training camp. You're not going to do Pat McAfee interviews anymore. So they were really trying to change the way
they said that.
Yeah, they had a conversation with him of, if you were to stay here, here's how we would want it to be.
Okay. She is absolutely conflating or interpreting that as Aaron Rodgers came to Florham Park. They sat down and basically an ultimatum was given to him. And I took that for its word. I took that as Aaron Glenn putting his foot down, Darren Mucci putting his foot down and saying, this is how it's going to be. You either agree to our terms or not. That's how I took it. I think that's how a lot of people took it. I've said it before. When you have a player who is playing very well at a very high caliber of play, you can deal with a lot of crap when it comes to that player. But the second that starts to diminish, all the outside stuff becomes harder and harder to ignore. And that's what I thought was happening here. But very quickly after this podcast came out, Connor Hughes was on WFAN, the local radio, sports radio station here in New York. And he was talking about how he interprets it all went down and that it wasn't just a single meeting. They did meet face to face, but this was multiple conversations, multiple phone calls, and there was no real ultimatum given. I want to now switch to Ian Rappaport because Ian Rappaport gave basically the exact same explanation as Connor Hughes did. Let's listen into what he had to say.
I want to look a little closer at how we got here, right? Because, obviously we learned on Sunday that the Jets were moving on from Aaron Rodgers today, becoming official. My understanding, though, is this was really the product of several conversations with the Jets and Rodgers. And from what I am told, there was no ultimatums made to him. It wasn't like, and I know there was a report, it's like, well, the Jets don't want Aaron Rodgers to do the Pat McAfee show. And if he agrees not to, then we'll bring him back. It wasn't like that. First of all, I don't think the Jets really care that he's on the Pat McAfee show, honestly. It probably just affects the PR department. Doesn't really affect anyone else. It's New York. There are plenty of distractions elsewhere. It was really more like, well, if you go on that, could you maybe use a little more discretion? And they can't tell him to show up to OTAs. That's not allowed, but it's like, we'd like you to be around more. And it really seemed like over the course of several discussions, Aaron Glenn, the new head coach, and Darren Muji and Aaron Rodgers all became clear this was just not the direction to go. And I think by the time that they had Aaron Rodgers come to New Jersey and really talk face-to-face, it was clear from both sides, that this was not going to work. So they are all moving on. Certainly, you mentioned it, Baldy, smart decision by the Jets. And we'll see where Aaron Rodgers lands, if he lands.
So basically, the decision was made between both parties before the meeting ever actually occurred. That seems much more likely to me that Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji were in contact with Aaron Rodgers. They were going back and forth. There were no real ultimatums given. So again, we're left with, why is Dianna Russini inflating these things? She has someone inside that organization that either hates Aaron Rodgers or hates Woody Johnson and is just funneling things to her and the Athletic and possibly Zach Rosenblatt, who also works for the Athletic. Okay. Is this person giving her the raw actual truth and she's conflating it? Or is this person giving her bad information and she's just reporting on it? We don't know what came first, chicken or the egg, right? We don't know exactly what the truth is there. But the end goal is the same. The media, or I'm sorry, not the media, but us fans on social media start immediately taking her word for what it's worth. And to be honest, we have to kind of stop doing that with her reporting. We just have to. So far, everything that she said that has been so sensational has either been reported on as not true by those in the actual Jets beat, because Dianna Russini is not a Jets beat reporter. Okay, that would be Connor Hughes, Samini, Rosenblatt, or Costello. She is saying things that are ultimately hurting the team one way or another. Woody Johnson did a special interview with, I believe, Brian Costello, explaining a lot of this. He said in the Aaron Glenn press conference, not during the press conference, but during the breakout sessions, that a lot of that information was way out of context. So we have to stop taking Dianna Russini's reporting as 100%. I do believe in a lot of the things she says, but we have to take it with a grain of salt. I would much rather listen to the actual guys that are on the beat, talk to these guys every day, than someone who has a source in the building that clearly, in my opinion, has an axe to grind. Was it an ultimatum? Was it not an ultimatum? At the end of the day, does it really matter? The point is, Aaron Rodgers is not going to be here. And we need to address really quickly what they're doing with this contract, because this is something that I really disagree with. The Jets could cut him today, and they would take a $49 million cap hit in 2025. It's a lot of money, but I am of the opinion that they should do this in order to set themselves up in 2026 without any sort of money allocated to a quarterback that's not there. Instead, Samini and Connor Hughes are reporting that they plan on making him a June 1st cut. By doing that, they split that $49 million up. $14 million in 2025 and $35 million in 2026. There are a few things to read into this. First off, the cap is expected to grow by at least 20 million by 2026. So the hit is not going to be as bad as everybody makes it out to be in 2026. This also tells me that this team is prepared to compete in 2025. And you know what? It may be better to sell guys like Garrett, Sauce, JJ, and Brees on competing in 2025. So that means, who's the quarterback? And we'll get into this in future videos. But I don't see someone like Justin Fields coming here on a 1-year contract if you are planning to compete in 2025, which I think the team is telling us they want to compete in 2025 based on the way they're structuring this money. I could very well see Kirk Cousins being here now, and I could very well see Sam Darnold, of all people, coming here. I don't think Sam would want to come back here. I think he'd probably be better off in the Raiders, but I see the Jets probably making a run at him. And that is all due to the fact of them changing the way that this contract or this dead money is structured. I don't agree with it. I would have rather taken all the money in 1 year and possibly had a very high draft pick in 2026, but it's clear that this team wants to compete. And by possibly competing in 2025, you are in a better position to try and re-sign that 2022 draft class. I don't think we're going to be able to keep all of them, but it makes it easier for the team to go to them and say, look, we had a good year in 2025. Let's talk extensions. I think that's the route they're taking now. I think that's, like it or love it, that's the route I think they're going to take. I think they're going to try and compete in 2025. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Again, Dianna Russini, I think, is conflating things again or inflating things again, a bit out of proportion. I trust Rappaport, I trust Connor Hughes, and I trust Rich Cimini much more than I do Russini, who has a source in the building, as opposed to someone who is actually around these players and talks to the front office constantly. Let me know what you guys think.